Welcome to Watercolor with Viv. Today we're going to do a peacock feather. Alright, first off you want to wet the very center of your peacock eye, or I should say peacock feather eye, with clear water, and then we are going to come back in and just drop in some teal, cobalt teal, mixed with just a little bit of Windsor blue. We're just going to drop that in there and let the water spread it around. Let it just float around the water. And then use your brush to kind of spread it. I'm just picking up a little bit in the center there with a damp brush, just to even it out. I'm just taking some of the Windsor blue and just going right around the edge and just tapping it lightly and letting it bleed into the blue mixture of cobalt and Windsor. Now I'm taking just a little bit of purple mixed with the blue and just tapping it at the very bottom. Now I'm going to take some transparent yellow with just a touch of new gamboge, and I am going to paint the next circle, not the one right next to where it's wet. You want to skip that area because you don't want to paint while the blue is wet, or else it'll bleed in. So you go to the next circle, and then I'm just painting that wet on dry. The paper is dry, and I'm just spreading the gold mixture right onto the dry paper. Next, I'm taking just a little bit of the rose. I'm going to mix it with a little new gamboge and just a little bit of the cobalt teal and Windsor mixture, just to make it a little darker, kind of a darker golden brown. And once I get that right, I'm just, while it's still wet now, I'm just going on tap on the very edge of that gold and let it darken it up and give it a little bit of dimension. Next, I'm just taking the cobalt teal and a little bit of the Windsor, and we are going to go around the outside of the blue. Both the gold and the blue are dry right now, so I don't have any danger of this green mixture bleeding into the blue or the gold. We let that dry. In between each area, when you paint, you want to make sure it's completely dry before you start new, so that it won't bleed in. And I'm just going to keep adding some of the green mixture. It's cobalt teal, a little bit of the transparent yellow, and a touch of sap green. Now I'm taking the cobalt blue and the Windsor blue mixture, adding a little bit more sap green, a little bit more transparent yellow, and then I'm just going to go around the edge and float that in. And just a little more cobalt teal, and I'm putting that straight at the top, and I haven't mixed it with anything, so that's just straight cobalt teal right at the top of the feather of the blue circle around the darker blue. Well, I guess this is more of a blue-green circle around the darker blue. And I'm just going to let that blend together while it's still wet. And notice how I'm leaving just a white line. That's going to be the vein of the feather right there at the bottom. You see where I'm not closing the circles, I'm leaving white space in between. That is going to be my vein, so that's why I'm leaving that white. Now on this outer circle, I'm wetting it first. Everything is dried. Just through time lapse, I've let everything dry, so it's not going to bleed in, but we're just going to go around the edges with clear water. And then I'm going to take a little bit of the transparent yellow. It's transparent yellow mixed with a little bit of the rose, and go right around the edge. And I'm just going to do that just slightly. Now I'm leaving a space between this brownish gold mixture and the other brown, the lighter, paler gold mixture, because I'm going to come back with another green. Now I'm just taking a damp brush and just pulling that together, pulling it all around, but notice I'm leaving the white space because I'm going to come back with some of the brighter green mixture that we have here that we've already mixed. And I'm going to let that dry before I come in with the green, just so that they don't bleed. Now, we've let that dry, and I'm coming back with the green into that little white space. And I'm just doing wet on dry because I don't want it bleeding everywhere. So the paper is dry, the paint is wet. Nope, I went out of the line just a little bit. I'm going to take a little tissue and just soak that up, and then come back and make the line a little more defined. I didn't want it to bleed that far over, so if you have a little mistake while it's wet, you can just dab it up with a little bit of tissue. Now I'm taking that same mixture that I used on the outer edge of the very outer edge of the peacock feather, and I'm making a little bit of texture. Remember, everything is dry. Let the layers dry before I add in another layer. Then I'm taking a mixture of purple, Windsor blue, and the green, and came into almost a black. So that I'm using just to darken the edge, that mixture. It's purple. No, let's see. It's purple, it's rose, and it's cobalt teal with a little bit of transparent yellow. That's what it is. So you'll make that mixture, and it's almost like a black. And just go around the edge just to darken it up some. And I'm taking a smaller brush and just making a little bit more texture at the very bottom part. I'm going to go around the very outside edge here, and it's dry. The paper is dry, and I'm just doing the wet paint right onto the dry paper around the very edge. And I'm using a number 2 brush. It's a really smaller brush. Then I'm just making a little bit of texture in there. Just putting a little texture down just to give it the insinuation or the look of a little bit of feather lines. It doesn't, you don't have to draw every one or paint every one. You just want to give it an indication, give it the illusion of texture. And I'm going to come back in here and add another layer of the brownie gold just to really accentuate that texture. And I'm just blending it around. Now I've waited for everything to dry. Now I'm just coming around the dark green with a little, the pale green with a little bit of the dark green. Just darkening it up a little bit. And remember, everything's dry before I've done this, so there's no bleeding. Getting a little bit of the cobalt teal, and I'm just going to darken up the center eye. Just makes it a little bit more vibrant, adding another layer on there. And again, everything is dry before you do another layer. Now I'm just taking my really dark mixture, and I'm going to come down and start putting the shadow on the vein of the feather. Let that dry. And then I'm making some goldish brown with a little bit of the red violet, a little bit of transparent yellow, and just a tiny bit of the green. Just, it makes a nice little green gold brown. And then with a number 2 paintbrush, I'm just going to hand draw in the little smaller areas of the feather, the little fuzzy things that go down the peacock's feather. I guess it is the actual feather, fronds. I'm not sure what they're called. But this is how you're going to paint them. And just keep freehanding the feathers in. And I'm adding a little bit of the darker mixture just to make it darker, make the goldy brown a little bit darker. You want to alternate different colors, the green and the browns and the darker colors, just to make it more realistic looking, give it a little bit more interest, give it a little bit more life. And you'll just keep on building the shape of the feather up with just little lines that you're freehanding all around, making sure that they all come back to the vein, the middle of the feather, the vein part, or the quill maybe you might want to call it. And I'm mixing a little bit more of the transparent yellow with the red violet just to get a more brown color. And just going to go right back over and just keep adding just the freehand lines. And I'm varying the pressure. I'm not using the same amount of pressure down the whole stroke, so that there's a little bit of darkness, a little bit of lightness. The stroke isn't all one tone or one shade of the color. Varying the pressure of my hand on it. And I'm just going to keep doing that until I get it. And I've changed brushes now. We'll have to point that out, that I am now using a number 6 because I want some thicker ones. Not only do I want the color of these little fronds to vary, I also want the thickness to vary. I want some thin ones, I want some thicker ones. And so I'm just adding those in. And there's no real skill that you have to do. You just, as long as they come back to the vein and you're just kind of putting them in there, they look fine. And then the next thing we'll do is make kind of a greeny brown, and we'll just come down and make some sort of shadows with the greeny brown. You know, when you look at a peacock feather, it reflects all different kinds of colors, but we're just going to put kind of a greeny brown down along the very edge of where the vein is, or the quill, just to make it look a little more solid and give it a little more shadow and add a little bit more interest. And you'll come down the other side as well, making sure that you don't go all the way to the vein. Leave some light areas going down the vein to give it some interest as well. And after that, you have your peacock feather, and it's pretty simple. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and thanks for watching. Bye.